Welcome. Today we're going to talk about Lean and Agile performance measurement, that is metrics, models, and measurements for Lean and Agile projects. Again, my name is Dave Rico. Please feel free to visit my website, grab all of my Lean and Agile briefs, my videos, and my white papers on how to apply these concepts to large government projects. I've been in the IT field for about 3.5 decades. My background is in computer science. I'm a career systems and software engineering methodologist. My first project was NASA's space station, and I wrote the first textbooks on the ROI of CMMI as well as the ROI of Agile methods. So let's begin with a popular quote that's attributed to Peter Drucker, among others. He said that you can't manage what you don't measure, and that's basically true. If you don't measure it, it's not important to you, and you certainly can't manage that. And that's true with anything, whether it's a traditional lean or even an agile project. So let's begin with the impetus for Lean and Agile projects and some basic measurements. Size in particular, when projects are of enormous size, complexity, cost, certain bad things happen, like the larger the project, the more defects it has, the greater the change or the instability. The slower the productivity, and of course the greater the probability of failure. That is, the bigger you are, the harder you fall. And these are basic measurements which people simply ignore today. So let's continue on with the traditional measures which people ignore. About 75% of requirements that are documented are simply wrong, which speaks to scale, scope, and size. The bigger you are, the harder you fall. The more requirements you document, the more waste and defects you produce, as shown in the next pie chart, which over 75% of requirements are not even needed at all. So why spend the time documenting them, which leads to an enormous rate of project failure, over $1 trillion globally each year. So what exactly is an agile metric? Well, it's a standard of measurement, it's a system of measures, or it's the quantification of a characteristic of an agile, project process or resulting system, of the size, cost, complexity, or quality of the software, the project itself, right? And you can measure the outcome of agility. How much are you collaborating? How much teamwork do you have? How well are you iterating or adapting to change? But fundamentally, it's the outcome measures, the business value, the internal and the external business value of the Agile project. Remember, Agile methods are a system of values as stated in the Agile Manifesto of collaboration, of individuals and interactions, of working systems and software and responding to change. So you can measure the collaboration quality, the teamwork quality, how frequently you're building and delivering software, and how quickly you're responding to change. So these become internal measures of agility, and these become almost just as important as external measures of agility. So how exactly do Agile methods work? Well, they really focus on implementing requirements in slices versus layer, rather than using the traditional toaster model, of an overscope project. What we do is we focus on functional slices. And when you focus on high value adding MVPs like this, the projects are obviously faster. You have earlier business value, lower cost, fewer defects, manageable risk, better system performance, and better security. So we can use cumulative workflow diagrams to measure agile performance. When you have overscope systems and you start too many requirements at one time, what happens is you bog productivity down, you create too many defects, and your lead and your cycle times are extremely long. But again, when you implement, projects in slices versus layered, well, this obviously not only increases your productivity and reduces cycle time and lead time and improves quality, but you ultimately more satisfied teams and customers. People simply do not like to be measured, especially programmers, whether they're traditional or agile. So the point is not to measure people to death, but if you're looking for a chart to illustrate the range of measures, this is a good one. There could be code metrics or traditional project metrics or even agile metrics or even testing metrics or DevOps metrics, but also business value. your agility and as well as your portfolio performance. One of the pain points of measurement is not simply that people don't like to be measured, but the immense cost and effort it takes to collect measurements. However, IDEs now automatically collect code metrics, whether it's Eclipse or commercial things like Microsoft VSTS. They will measure for you code size, complexity, and coverage without much, investment at the individual project or organization level. Once again, these IDEs like Eclipse or even Microsoft Visual Studio will automatically count the lines of code as the programmers create the code. They'll automatically calculate the complexity, the defect density, the number of functions, Halstead effort, average function length, the number of defects, as well as common programming efforts, errors, or even vulnerabilities. Although agile, methodologists may not like to admit it, even traditional measures like, productivity, effort or hours or software quality or even time or software success still count. And many tools like Jira will automatically, track or estimate these figures for you as you document user stories and complete them. They'll tell you how fast you completed, how many hours it took, Again, they'll estimate quality and lead in cycle time for you. Capers-Jones created some interesting backfire tables for converting software size back and forth from lines of code into function points so you can compare, software size across projects. But he also created, productivity backfire tables, which illustrate that the larger and more expensive and more complex a project, its productivity actually starts slowing dramatically, and its quality starts decreasing, and its success rate also decreases rapidly. Apart from the rather traditional measures we just covered on the previous few slides, there are specific agile tracking metrics like story points are very, very popular. Sprint burn down, release burn down, even velocity, which is a form of productivity, feature or epic progress, or even agile earned value is emerging for larger, public sector projects. Here's a simple backfire table that translates user stories, features, and epics from story points into hours, days, months, and years to show you that the larger a requirement is, the more effort it takes. And obviously, if you estimate your backlog and story points, how quickly you burn those story points down might translate into velocity. And here could be your release burn down of your backlog over time, as well as your feature progress or your epic progress for a larger project. For more mature Lean and Agile projects, Agile testing metrics become very, very important, like your test coverage, your degree of test automation, how frequently you integrate, your running tested features, your degree of DevOps automation, and how rapidly you deploy. And these are becoming increasingly, important measures for high performance organizations. We've known for decades that the majority of code is dead code or unreachable code. So, we can actually measure, how much of that code is dead, which becomes an extremely important measure. And to the degree of test automation, in order to reach that code and determine your coverage, you need increasing levels of automation. And the more frequently you build and deploy, it actually drives down, your defects and failures. And obviously, the faster you work, the more you get done, and the higher your success rate. Very early on, a central, principle or outcome of Lean and Agile methods was business value, return on investment. So, your total costs become important, your total economic benefits, your benefit to cost ratio, your return on investment, your net present value, or even your real options become critical quantitative, measures of Agile performance at the user story, feature, capability, or even epic MVP level. Here are some simple metrics for estimating economic business value and an example of how to apply these using, agile productivity and quality. And we see that the basic Scrum teams have about a 7-to-1 return on investment over traditional projects. And once you begin using continuous integration, continuous delivery, and DevOps, your return on investment increases dramatically. And you can even do, earned business value, how quickly your projects achieve their estimated business value. Well, all the quantitative metrics we've covered so far might cause people to rebel. I think we're realizing more and more that agile health metrics matter even more than some of those quantitative measures, like what is the quality of your teamwork, collaboration, your agile process maturity, your degree of agility. We now realize that team happiness and even customer delight are possibly even more important than any measure we've described so far. So we now know that teamwork and even collaboration are extremely important, measures of agile performance. Good teams have clear goals, are highly motivated, and have high levels of cooperation and empowerment. There's high levels of openness, transparency, consensus, conversations, interactions, relationships, and you can actually measure these properties to determine your agile performance. At the organizational or portfolio level, other things become important, like portfolio Kanbans, where you can organize your epic MVPs into roadmaps, and you can determine what is the progress of those epic MVPs and the health of your portfolios, as well as your programs. And you can even construct enterprise scorecards from some of these measures. You can even organize, corporate or portfolio objectives into Kanban boards. So these would be the corporate objectives that are yet to be started, those that might be started, those might be in progress, those might be in evaluation, and those that might be completed. And you can even use epic progress charts to determine, the completion rate of some of those corporate initiatives, or portfolio radars to determine the health of your portfolio or individual programs as well. From a lean and even agile perspective, two basic measures are lead time and cycle time. Lead time begins when a market need or a customer problem has been sensed. Cycle time begins when engineering or product development actually begins working on that problem, and both clocks stop when the product or service has reached market. So these become extremely important measures for determining both lean and agile performance. Apart from some of the basic measures we've talked about so far, other DevOps metrics are becoming more popular for extremely high-performing organizations. How quickly you're deploying, your change volume, again, lead time, as we discussed previously, number of failed deployment, mean time to recovery, availability, performance, response time, even, business value, soft measures like number of visits, revenue, orders, abandoned carts become extremely important DevOps metrics. So that kind of concludes our coverage of the range of metrics. Let's start looking at some of the actual outcome measures of using agile methods. Agile projects, early ones had lower costs and smaller teams because they had better managed scope and they were faster, and surprisingly they actually had 10 times better quality, whereas people often believe that the agile methods had lower quality than traditional ones. Once again, using economic measures of business value like return on investment, net present value, even real options, because of the increased productivity of basic agile teams and reasonable quality, they actually had lower costs, which led to higher benefits ranging in the millions of dollars for small projects, which meant that even basic teams had better return on investment, and even more mature ones had even greater ones. As we move up to enterprise scale DevOps, the return on investment becomes even greater. So we're moving away from the basic productivity and quality benefits of basic Scrum teams, and we're looking at total enterprise automation of the build, the test, the deployment process. So now the return on investment increases dramatically. The cost of quality decreases, and the and the cycle times and the lead times actually begin, shortening dramatically. We see some of those benefits in this Hewlett-Packard case study, where once they began using enterprise, DevOps, their build time actually reduced dramatically. The number of builds they started doing increased dramatically. Their feedback cycle increased dramatically. But most important, their development costs actually decreased, which meant by nearly 80%. So those savings could be, returned to the enterprise in terms of revenues, profits, dividends, more products and services, more innovation. As we alluded to earlier, basic measures of agile and lean performance were lead and cycle times, and we see that basic DevOps teams are about 62 times faster than large, government projects. And once you get up to enterprise, scale, highly mature, highly performing DevOps teams, they're thousands of times faster than public sector, projects as we see at Assembla, Google, and even, Amazon. Once again, we see some of those performance gains at Blackboard when they had all of their products and services integrated into one massive code base. Over 90% of their code was integration or glue code that was wasteful, and their productivity came to a screeching halt, and their quality went out the window. But once they sort of disaggregated their products and services into microservices, their productivity shot up, their quality shot up, and like Hewlett-Packard, those savings went back to innovation and revenues and profits. Even public sector organizations like DHS can reap the benefits of enterprise scale, DevOps, as they reduce their cycle times from 180 days to about 1 to 3 days, the number of artifacts from 20 documents down to 2, and the number of gate reviews from 10 down to 1. So yes, even government projects can reap the benefits of enterprise DevOps, not just commercial enterprises like Google, Amazon, Yahoo, or Facebook. Here's a great case study of enterprise scale, return on investment benefits by the DevOps research people, or DORA people. They showed that for enterprise scale, DevOps initiatives, they can reap big benefits in the tens of millions of dollars for a small investment cost. So the return on investment is extremely high, but most importantly, you can actually reap that benefit very, very quickly. Today's organizations are not just looking at agility at the team, project, program, or portfolio level, but they're looking at total business agility. What is your strategy agile, your culture, your processes, your products and services, the technologies themselves, your IT infrastructure, your organizational design, and your capital infrastructure. So we're moving on. We're moving well beyond just basic Scrum and basic Kanban productivity measurement now. Here's an early study of organizational level agility, showing that agile organizations had 6% better earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation, 4% better return on equity, 8% return on assets, 14% better ROI, but most importantly, 36% better earnings and 12% better revenues. Over 95% of global IT projects now use agile methods, and we see that the demand for government jobs or government agile professionals has increased by nearly 3 orders of magnitude, and today over 80% of government projects now use agile methods. And when you do that, we can actually see an impact on GMP and GDP. So high performing nations have better national level productivity than their manufacturing and agricultural counterparts. What have we learned here today? Well, people don't like to be measured, whether they're lean, agile, or traditional, but you simply cannot manage what you don't measure. So don't hesitate to measure early and often, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Some traditional measures still apply, but you really want to align your measures to lean and agile principles like teamwork and customer delight. But you're going to expect some resistance to change, because like we said, people don't like to be measured. So let's close with a quote by Lord Kelvin that he said that when you can measure what you are speaking about and express it in numbers, you know something about it. But when you cannot measure it or you cannot express it in numbers, your knowledge is of a meager and unsatisfactory kind. Please visit davidfrico.com to get my Lean and Agile briefings, white papers, and videos. Thank you very much for joining me here today.